Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Cynthia Chaplin, and this is Voices. Every Wednesday, I will be sharing conversations with international wine industry professionals, discussing issues in diversity, equity, and inclusion through their personal experiences working in the field of wine. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate our show wherever you get your pods. Welcome to Voices. I'm Cynthia Chaplin, and today I am so excited to welcome Helena Nicklin. She hails from the UK, and she's an award-winning freelance wine and spirits writer, a broadcaster, wine consultant, drinks influencer, and judge for various international wine and spirits awards. She's the co-producer and co-presenter of the fabulous The Three Drinkers series on Amazon Prime. And most recently, she penned an article in the Daily Mail that really grabbed a lot of attention from women in the wine sector, taking a good hard look at the misogyny that is still blighting our industry. So welcome to the show, Helena. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Huge pleasure. Well, before we get into sort of the nitty-gritty that I'm looking forward to talking with you about, I just wanted to ask you, how did you get into wine? I mean, I know your background was originally studying to be an actress. What happened that took you away from acting and helped you get into the wine world?
Well, I'm trying. What is the short answer to this question? Well, I was studying languages at university, so I studied French and Italian, and I lived in Rome, and I'd always wanted to be an actress, but I was told that it was just not a valid kind of career path. And so I was wondering what to do, but then I met a load of students from Oxford and Cambridge who were putting on a play in Rome. And, I was studying at the university and they were working as assistants. And to cut a long story short, I did a play with them and then realized they were all auditioning for big London drama schools. And so I realized I could do that too. And so I got home and I thought, I'm going to audition for drama school, but I need a job in the meantime. And I was quite lucky. Where I lived, there was a wine shop that was a French and Italian wine shop. And because I'd spent a year in Rome basically having dinner parties, and that's how we learned Italian, I thought that's
a good way to do it.
Well, it totally is. It's the only way to do it, I think. So I went in and I said, I can speak French and Italian. I quite like wine. Can I have a job, please? And that's the short answer.
Excellent. I love it. Nothing calculated, just, okay, here I am.
Yes. And it worked. And I did both for a while. The manager of the wine shop let me go to auditions. But then eventually I had the crossroads moment. I had to make a choice between acting or wine. I chose wine, but then said that one day I would bring back the performance element to drinks and wine. And that's what I'm doing now.
Yes. And we will get to that because I love that aspect of your career. But I've always wondered how you got there. So it's good to hear that it was a nice natural choice, not something that was forced.
Oh gosh, no.
Well, your Amazon Prime series, The Three Drinkers, is absolutely one of my favorites. So first of all, I want to thank you for doing that. It's a great show, livens up my evening every time I watch it.
Thanks.
For those of you who don't watch it, you have to catch it. It's a great combo of travel and tasting and content and entertainment. What inspired the idea for the show?
Well, being an actress and basically a massive show-off, I always wanted to make TV and bring my particular way of explaining wine to people on screen, because I do have quite a different way of educating when I run wine tastings. Basically, it's about, I give personalities to great varieties and I dress up my dog in silly videos and things. It's quite, the idea is that it's irreverent and it doesn't take itself too seriously, but you kind of learn through entertainment. And I wanted to make TV for drinks for such a long time. Pitching it out, nobody would take the idea, wine is too niche. They just kept saying wine and spirits, drinks, it's too niche, which I don't believe at all.
I totally disagree with that.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. And so then I thought, well, what if I tried to do it myself? And then I found Adi and Colin had some good contacts that said, I think I know a way that we can do it. And so we thought, right, stuff this, let's try and do it ourselves. If no one's going to give us the job, we'll make it.
That's incredible. And it really is such a great show. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say irreverent, because so much of the content is quite, informational.
Yeah, we're about to start filming series 3, which I can't believe, seeing as we only launched series 2 on St. Patrick's Day in March this year. So it's come around very quickly.
Wow, it's amazing. And it is such an interesting format, and very interesting for people who aren't really in the wine and spirits business. It's very accessible. There's a lot of sort of takeaways from it. I think the show is wonderful. But how do you keep it so lively and fresh through all these seasons? I know you've changed from being the three drinkers to Colin has exited, and now you've got some new friends in there.
Yes. Well, I mean, there have been a few changes. Basically, the idea is that every time we do it, we make it a bit better. We were really feeling our way with Scotch, and you can see that. It's a bit more like a pilot, the first half of it anyway. So we changed it up in series 2 by making it more about the country and trying to appeal to a wider audience through travel and food and tourism, and then get them interested in drinks that like through the back door, as it were. So it's the three drinkers in Ireland as opposed to Irish whiskey, and we cover all drinks, not just the whiskey in there. And it's a bit more fun just because we're a bit more relaxed. And yes, you're right, there was a big difference, and we like it because it means that it will always be fresh, and that is the three drinkers concept now. And while Colin will always be the original third drinker, the three drinkers now is me and it's AD with a revolving roster of guests. And that could be a different guest or two in every series. And that goes across our Amazon show, but also our podcast and also on our website with our articles as well.
And it is so much fun, and it does feel very inclusive and diverse with you all on the road and doing different things in different places. It's a lot of fun, and I think it does play to your acting background as well. It's a good one to learn stuff, but to also enjoy. It doesn't feel like a lecture.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I think the second series was quite a bit lighter than the first. We had a drag queen singing to us while we sat in barrels of seaweed.
It was absolutely amazing. I love it.
And the series 3 will be slightly different again. We've got a slightly different format, and yeah, it should just be lots of fun, really. Education through the fun.
Absolutely. And I like things like that where people are entertained but also get a takeaway that's meaningful. And as you said, gets them into wine and spirits through the back door, instead of feeling like they're in a classroom. So it's accomplishing a lot of things, I think. But we're having a good time laughing at the success of this show, but I know your own wine career hasn't always been quite that easy. The article that I mentioned when we first started talking this morning in the Daily Mail was just back in March, and it was called "Why the World of Wine is Full of Chateau Bottled Sexists," which was a great title. It grabbed the attention for sure, but the article was serious and ripped back the curtain on sort of this continuing problem of misogyny that women in our wine sector are battling against. And in fact, myself, I don't know any female colleagues who haven't got some sort of tale to tell about harassment and bullying and belittling. And you were incredibly open in your article about your experiences. What inspired you to speak so openly in such a public format? The Daily Mail has a huge readership.
It does, thank you. I can't take credit for the title. That was definitely a Daily Mail doing. But yes, I thought with something like this, you either go big or go home. And it came from the years of everything that I'd endured, but most importantly, what really inspired me just to do something about it was because of a couple of things that have happened in recent years. I seem to have become a sort of a mentor to some of these younger up-and-coming wine writers and influencers and a couple of them had some issues, and they came to me and they shared some stories. And I thought, okay, well, I feel the need to do something about this now. And so I wrote it a lot for them as well, because I just felt I had to do something. And so I put the story out there, and I was worried that my career would be over. When I saw it the next day, I actually asked to pull it, because I just thought, I cannot walk into a tasting now.
I can't believe that you felt that way about it. It was quite a bare-all article, but it was so powerful and so well done. My heart is breaking that you felt that way when you saw it the next day.
I'm very glad I went ahead with it, to be honest. In fact, I didn't really have a choice. It was already out there online, it turns out. But I'm now, in hindsight, I am so glad, because the amount of emails and messages and tweets, DMs, everything, I still haven't managed to reply to everything. And it's been women sharing stories, and they're all saying the same thing. The more people talk about this, the less it's going to happen. So thank you. And so, yeah, I mean, and I can't believe what people have been telling me about things that we've all put up with for years. And it's like, hang on, oh my God, we have to keep telling this story, even if it sounds like it's the same story coming from different places, because it's just constantly a reminder. And I think the next step is, there is definitely a next step. And next step is talking to the men and trying to empower them to become genuine allies, telling them what that actually means.
Exactly.
So that the men themselves can call it out with other men, because it's when a woman is on a press trip and she's the only female. I mean, that shouldn't be allowed. I don't know who is doing these trips these days, but it's still happening. You've got a big group of men who've been in the industry for years who start drinking at 6 a.m. and then they just are horrific. Even if like they're nice people that you see at tastings, suddenly there's a group of them and they become a bunch of animals.
Yeah, and I think it's that old, for want of a better word, that old boys' school thing of what goes on the road stays on the road, and they lose all sense of boundary and sort of time and place and appropriateness.
Absolutely, and they do each other on as well. I'm glad that a lady who told me about one of her experiences recently had the wherewithal just to write down everything people were saying.
Wow.
Because they systematically went through just about every woman that has done anything of note in the wine trade and just ripped them to pieces.
Wow, that is incredible. I'm astounded. Well, I say that, but I'm not really astounded. That's the terrible thing about it. It's you wrote in that article that being young and blonde in the wine industry certainly didn't help you. And, we all know how often young women in our industry are just assumed to be the waitress or assumed to be, the pretty thing to look at in the room, or, totally lacking any kind of meaningful knowledge and experience. But I was really struck about what you wrote about men in the industry who you thought were your friends, and then they subsequently attacked you like extremely viciously in print and online, really simply because you were succeeding. What happened?
Yes, well, I think there was one main thing that I think you're referring to was, I think it was at the end of 2019 in lockdown. Oh no, it must have been 2020. Anyway, so a very, very well-known person in the wine trade who's been on TV a lot, who's been around for dinner, who, I've had my dog sit on his lap, my husband cook for him, we opened lots of nice wine, had a lovely time. Known him for years. He started to write a series of missives that, I don't know if you've ever heard of Pop Bitch.
Yes.
But which is where this sort of anonymous person takes a pop at some famous people, and it's just a load of bitchiness in the name of entertainment, basically.
And everyone's allowed to do it because they don't have to sign it.
Well, exactly. And also because these people are really famous, they seem to be untouchable. Anyway, this guy seemed to think it was a good idea to do that for the wine trade, but got it wrong. And while he is an excellent writer, you can't sort of doubt that. And if you didn't know anyone involved, you might even find it quite amusing in places. It was actually full of defamation. I was told by 3 lawyers we could sue him because of the nature of my work and what I do. This is just me. And he hit so many people, but just because of the things he said, I knew that I wouldn't be able to do certain bits of work because of the friendship network that he had, because he's an older middle-class male who's been in the trade for years, who knows everybody. I knew that I'd lost credibility across the board just because of what he wrote.
And that's just an outrage. That is just completely an outrage that people like that have power in their pen to take you down just so, on the basis of nothing, just jealousy.
Well, I know. I mean, at least I've learned that it is about jealousy, but that it didn't help very much at the time because it was so damaging, not just to me, but just everyone else that he went for. And he always seemed to go for people who don't have an HR department, And like the more of a competitor you were to him, the more he took you down. And he's a direct competitor to me because he makes TV shows about wine. And so it's in his interest for me to not succeed, which is what was so painful about it as well.
Thank you for listening to Italian Wine Podcast. We know there are many of you listening out there, so we just want to interrupt for a small ask. Italian Wine Podcast is in the running for an award, the Best Podcast Listening Platform, through the Podcast Awards, the People's Choice. Listener nominations is from July 1st to the 31st, and we would really appreciate your vote. We are hoping our listeners will come through for us, so if you have a second and could do this small thing for us, just head to ItalianWinePodcast.com from July 1st to the 31st and click the link. We thank you, and back to the show.
Absolutely. I mean, you have said you felt really forced out of the mainstream wine trade because of all of this, terrible, inappropriate behavior and these public attacks by men in our industry. And it is.
It happened just last week as well, Cynthia. Just last week. Again. No, not with this guy, but with someone else that he knows, someone that I've known for years. Again. It was less about me this time and more about a couple of the other younger up and coming influencers. But it's like, it's always the same thing. It's men not understanding that in this day and age, wine communication is not all about critic scores aimed at decanter readers and above and very, very technical information. It's across the board. It's tapping into people who are just at the beginning of their wine journey. And guess what? Instagram is a massive, massive tool for that. And women are particularly well suited to it because I don't know why, but just there are so many more women in wine on Instagram because it works and because we know how to do it well. And men just cannot seem to understand that. And so they're always pitching like the influencer or the communicator, the visual communicator against the old stuffy wine critics when there's room for everyone. It shouldn't be a fight, but it's so divisive. And that's what last week was about once again.
And it's so damaging. As you say, I think there's a certain group of people in the wine industry, old middle-aged men who don't understand how marketing has changed, how media has changed, and communication has changed. And you said that some of these attacks basically said the only reason you were successful is because you have a pair of breasts. And we all have had this sort of thing thrown at us. And I think these, as you said, young female influencers are getting even more backlash for this because they are successful and because they know how to take a good photograph. They know how to frame a bottle of wine and a glass full of wine and have everything look right. And it has nothing to do with their sexuality or their sexual orientation, but it has to do with the fact that they're young. They know how to work social media, and these older men feel threatened. I don't know why, but it's quite clear that they do.
I mean, that is what is coming across absolutely loud and clear. And I think the saddest thing about the most recent case was that the guy who wrote it is the editor of a wine magazine, and he sits on the judging panel for the IWSC, a very prestigious wine competition, as you'll know. And
of course,
the amount of messages I've had about I'm not entering that ever because I know that I haven't got a hope in help because I'm a young female. And I will have my application ripped to shreds in public like he did with somebody and then try to pretend it wasn't about her.
It's just heartbreaking that young, talented, smart women are being intimidated out of working in wine, which should be the most inclusive place to work. Wine is for everyone. How do we combat this? I mean, what are next steps? You wrote a very open, honest, and sort of barrel, signed your name to it article. And of course, those of us in the industry, without having to name names, we know who you're talking about when you write. It's quite clear. So how do we combat this? What do we do to make this stop? How do we educate these men and how do we protect ourselves?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And one thing that I'm asking myself a lot and the other women are that I know. I think one big thing is just to make sure that you've got a support network. I mean, since that article, I was asked to join a WhatsApp group, which has been amazing. It's called Wine Gurus, and it's a group of women. And what I'm seeing all the time is anyone else going to this tasting? Who's going here? So people know who's around. And it's, it's not that it's dangerous, obviously, but it's much easier to walk into a tasting when there's more than one of you. And so, you feel empowered by more of you being there, of course.
Absolutely. It's the old safety in numbers thing. That's there are still certain tastings and competitions that I feel very not unsafe, just uncomfortable at.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's it. And what I've also seen, which has been great, is because we've a good reason to have this chat, this WhatsApp group, is that people are throwing ideas around saying, do you know what, this happened at a tasting and it didn't sit well with me. I said this, do you think that's okay? Or they're in the tasting and they're like, this is happening. What shall I do? And it's just, and then you've got this sort of force, this female force at the end of a phone, just going, like giving advice and empowering the person at the end of it to actually say something and call people out on it, which I know is really hard if you're the only woman in the room, especially if you are a 20-something woman in a room full of 40, 50, 60-something men.
Absolutely. But what a great thing to create, as you said, instantly accessible think tank to support women. That's a wonderful idea, I think, especially when it's in real time happening. And it's hard enough to call out, at a tasting if you think the wine is off. When you think the behavior is off, it's even worse.
What's so conflicting about it, though, is so often like the main perpetrators of all of this, when you see them, they are so charming and they're like almost coming across it like they're trying to help you. And then when you're not in the room, it's, they completely take you down. So it's not as simple as them being rude to you sometimes in front of your face. So it's very hard to confront. Do you know what I mean?
I completely do. And it comes in many forms. It's either, the sexual innuendos or the belittling of your knowledge and experience. It does come in many forms, and sometimes you don't see it coming. Absolutely true.
And the belittling of, making you think that you're being offended is your problem and your fault.
I think that is, you've put your finger on something that is really a problem that's going to make this very difficult to solve, because women do guilt extremely well. I think it's a default position for a lot of us in a lot of cases, and maybe that was my fault. Maybe I shouldn't have worn that dress or done that thing or whatever. We have to find a way to train women not to react that way. And as you say, to call out, no, I'm sorry, this is not my fault. This is your bad behavior.
That's the trouble, isn't it? I mean, it's being labeled the troublemaker, and like the clever men, even if they don't know they're doing it, know how to use guilt as a weapon.
Of course. And then that labeling, it does stick. And as you say, it can follow you through your career, damage your career, because they are all friendly, across the world, not just in the UK, across the world, they are all friends and they do all talk. It's very hard to combat that. I know you've got a daughter. I have 4 daughters. What advice would you give young women wanting to get into the wine business now? In light of all these things, what words of warning and wisdom, what steps to take? How do female veterans stay positive and stay in the business that we love and support new women coming into the business?
Very good question. Very good question indeed. I think it's forewarned is forearmed. And it's not just wine, is it? It's let's face it, it's most, I think we're quite far behind a lot of other industries, but yes, it's just a warning that this is for like millennia, not quite that long, that wine has been a male dominated space for so many years. We are still at the very start of just having women in it, meaning it's diverse, let alone any other kind of diversity. And so it's bearing that in mind, and that it's going to take a couple of generations to get it back onto an even keel. And I think it's just making sure that if you're joining the wine trade as a woman, you're seeking out other women who are doing similar things to you, and making sure that you have a support network there to bounce ideas off, to go to tastings with at the very beginning, while you're learning. You're learning the ropes, essentially.
That's a really good point. I think that is a great takeaway to, encourage young women to form a network, form a support group. Do have people that you can travel with, attend events with. That's a very good point.
There are lots of them around, you see, and but it's just finding them and being invited into them and just making sure you know who those people are. But I think once you're in one, you'll. What I've noticed is you get invited into lots of other ones as well. There is no shortage of them anymore, which is great. They're just none of them are as big as they could be. I mean, one thing that would be amazing for the wine trade, but it's going to involve somebody with a lot of time to make it happen. But I guess a woman could do that, is building the equivalent of what the advertising industry have. They have something called, the advertising industry has WACL, and that's essentially Women in Advertising and Communications. And it's a huge support network, and with very, very senior women, and they have fundraising events and they give talks, and it is absolutely fantastic. We don't really have a central organization like that in wine anywhere in the world, as far as I can see. And I think that would be the next step. I'd happily help someone.
I was just going to say, I think we're onto something here. I think we need WACL for wine.
Yes.
Yeah, that is great. And I think it needs to be something that's not flying below the radar, like WACL is. It has a big profile. People know about it. And I think in wine, some of the support groups that we build for ourselves, or that we find for ourselves in wine with other women, are kind of under the radar because we do feel intimidated. And I think getting getting that out there. Whackle for wine. I'm going to get that on a t-shirt.
We want buckle for wine.
Exactly. Right now, we want it now.
What they do so well is they have been so great. They started by building their female network and talking to each other, empowering each other, and then they invited in the men, and they have been educating the men, as honorary members, and all those men now, hopefully, are true allies, and they go off and they hold each other to account. And I'd love the wine trade to get to a place where we can do that.
And I think that's the only way that change will ever really happen, is if men begin holding other men accountable for their behavior. That's another exceptionally good point.
It is.
And I think it's probably as difficult for them to do as for women to call it out in a room full of men who you respect and potentially have control of your career. You don't want to do that. So educating them to do it is exactly the right idea.
Yes. And also I think if it's just women, we are in danger of becoming as cliquey as the men were in the first place. So it has to be inclusive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we need their support and their insight. I always like to hear what my male colleagues say when something like that happens. And some of them are quite insightful indeed. And it would be useful, as you say, to start with the women and then invite the men in. I love that idea. Well, with that, I will leave you to get on with your day. And I'm so grateful for you coming on and talking about what is never an easy subject, especially when you've been the victim of it. And I'm so delighted that you got around it and came up with the 3 drinkers as a way of sort of being inclusive, bringing yourself back to the forefront, not being shot down by these people, and being as successful as you are is a great role model in and of itself.
Thank you very much indeed.
I wish you great success with Series 3. Looking forward to it. Thank you for your time today, Helen. I really appreciate it.
It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening, and remember to tune in next Wednesday when I'll be chatting with another fascinating guest. Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world and the only one with a daily show. Tune in every day and discover all our different shows. You can find us at ItalianWinePodcast.com, SoundCloud, Spotify, Himalaya, or wherever you get your pods.
Hi guys, I'm Joy Livingston and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.